So last night we watched the newest slasher film on Peacock called
Sick. Super sick.
Super sick. And this is written by Kevin Williamson. Everyone knows I'm not a Scream fan, so I'm not going to sit here and bash on Kevin Williamson. That made me not that excited. But John Hyams? I don't know. Is a director that I do like. And his last film, called Alone, was a film I greatly enjoyed and made my tops of that year, which I think was 2020. Which is a great year for horror. So, to make that list, it had to be pretty damn good for me. And I really, really enjoyed it. And ironically enough, I just showed Kayla Universal Soldier, which was not directed by him. That's directed by Roland Emmerich. But he was the director of 2 Universal Soldier sequels.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of ironic.
Yeah.
Because we literally just watched it.
We did just watch that.
But yeah, so what's this movie about? This movie is about a couple of college girls. They don't get naked. Don't get too excited.
No, they do not.
They have to go quarantine because of this thing they invented for the film called the pandemic.
The pandemic.
And COVID.
Coronavirus.
COVID.
COVID-19,
that's
yes.
right. I think that might have actually happened.
Maybe.
That might have actually happened, 75 years ago. That's what it feels like. Now, I think right out the gate with that, there's going to be some groans and eye rolls, right? Like, some people just see COVID as some propagandic agenda, leftist kind of nonsense, right? Like, if you have COVID in your film, it's propaganda now.
That's so
right? And it's
crazy.
It affected the world
100%,
greatly.
Yes,
you're not going to not have it be mentioned in films,
right?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And I'm not really the best person to gauge whether or not this plays to one side or the other. I'm sure there'll be people screaming in the comments this is so leftist, or no, this is more right-leaning, or what. I don't even fucking care. I personally thought that they handled the COVID stuff really well. And it was actually, it was probably up there with my things that I did quite enjoy about the film.
Me too.
So anyways, they have to go off in quarantine, and they go to this remote cabin. It's one of the girls' dads, and it's outrageous.
It's like a resort.
Yeah, it's insane. And when they get there, they are being stalked and harassed and potentially murdered by a faceless killer in a mask who's coming after him. So yeah, I mean, a pretty basic plot line, of course, for a slasher.
Yeah.
Now, for slasher fans, and because this is kind of the slasher channel, do I think that slasher fans will be into this? Well, okay. If you go by the criteria of Sinister Cinema, which I had talked about in the past, you have to have great kills. Does this film have great kills? No. There's a kill that's fine.
Yeah.
There's a kill that's
it's pretty
it's
good.
all right.
Yeah.
That was good, right? Nothing great. Nothing to report. Nothing's going to make the top 10. Freaking Sissy or Terrifier 2 or something.
No, nothing like that.
Nothing even
like
close
that.
to that. It was all right.
Yeah.
So kills, meh. And that alone, I mean, I think for a lot of slasher fans, that's going to be I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. And I think that's totally fair. In a slasher, because I got into a little bit of a conversation with somebody in my feed of my Instagram when I had kind of put this guy on blast a little bit for not liking gore but being a horror fan, and I was like, I don't know, man. He's like, if there's gore in a movie, I'm not a fan of it and I don't want to watch it, but I like horror. And it's that's fine, but like it seems like a weird genre to be watching in modern times when you're opposed to gore, because a lot of horror films now have gore in them.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it seems like you're like rolling the dice all the time.
Yeah.
And that just seems like, I don't know.
I think that there's a lot of like horror subgenres that maybe you don't need gore for and are still definitely horror and scary.
This ain't one of them.
But slasher films are like, quintessentially violent. That is like the whole appeal of a killer, stalking and killing people. So I think it's a mixed bag, right? Like it's hard to put the like limitations on horror and say like we don't want any gore, but of course that's not everybody that is into horror and is a fan. It's just...
Can you make a good slasher film without gore? Yes.
Sure.
It can be done. Mm-hmm. Is it done often? No. It's a rare thing. Yeah. For me. And, I mean, film is subjective, as we always talk about, so we can disagree on that. Okay. Second piece of criteria, naked babes. No. 0.
Nudity.
0. So, that's like the third, I should say, because that's like the least important, but still important. And then third, to have like fun, memorable characters, like or memorable characters. This one, they're all right. They're fine.
They're fine. I don't find
Nothing
them particularly memorable
no.
or like especially fun about them. I think this is definitely a more serious slasher.
Sure.
It doesn't have like the campiness or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So
the acting's good.
Yeah.
The characters they're just normal.
They are. They're just very normal people, which actually
is fine.
You commented on.
Yeah.
And said that you like enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, they feel real. For the most part, there's certain things you kind of roll your eyes at a little bit in this movie, but for the most part, it does feel real. So it's got that going for it. Mm-hmm. Overall, did I like it? Yeah, I'm kind of like middle of the road with it.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I just kind of I really liked certain things about it. I didn't like other things about it, and at the end of it, I was like, yeah, like there was enough positives here for me to be like, I watched, I enjoyed it. I think for like hardcore slasher fans that are like really wanting like brutal slashers and an iconic villain and this and that, none of that shit is here.
Yeah, the thing that I liked honestly most about it was like the fact that it was set during the pandemic. Like I actually thought that was a really cool setup for a slasher, and I think that the story itself and kind of the motivations behind the characters and everything, I was into that. It made sense to me, and I was like, okay. But I'm the same as you. Like I'm just kind of middle of the road. Like I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, and I definitely didn't hate it. I'm just kind of meh on it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely bought into the hysteria and the motivations for the killer.
Yes.
Right? Like I totally bought that. And I also really liked that it kind of like leaned into hypocrisy.
Yes.
With that. Mm-hmm. And I get it, but then at the same time you're like, what about,
Yeah.
So there is that angle to it too. So I did quite like how the reveal happened and what it was and what we ultimately found out about everybody. Mm-hmm. It made perfect sense for this film, for what it's attached itself to, COVID, right? Like COVID is an integral part of this. It's not just a story where it was filmed during COVID and they're injecting like pieces of the like way life, things were life. Yeah, exactly.
The pandemic life.
No, it's not that.
No.
It's COVID is central to the story.
Yes, it is very plot important.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that I liked. Mm-hmm. That I liked a lot. and I liked how they incorporated it and how it actually made perfect sense. With a film called Sick, though. I mean, I get it. It's this double entendre that person is the movie's sick for being a horror movie and the killer's sick and all that. But then it's, you guys get it. But with like a name like Sick, that's the kind of name that makes you think from hearing the title that the movie's going to be like sick and depraved and violent and nasty. Yeah. And it's not. It's very Kevin Williamson, right? It's very like bloodless for the most part and like, clean and like CW type of shit.
But it has like some great social commentary, which I think is also really, typical.
I'm just saying it's a very glossy film.
Yes.
Right?
It is
like
not
his style.
Dirty and sick and depraved or anything like that.
No.
Which I don't know. I mean, like, yes, I would have liked that, of course, because I really enjoy seeing violence, but I think just like we've been saying, it's subjective, so I think there are plenty of people that could watch this and be very disturbed by like that one kill that we're talking about, and it just depends. It depends on what level you can kind of handle. But for us and for most like hardcore slasher fans, like it's not going to be anything close to that.
But I will give credit here to the director for setting up some really good action sequences and how they were shot and how they added to the intensity of the scene and made you feel like you were more involved and more in the action. So really good camera work and ideas with tracking shots and whatnot. So the director did pay off. I just wish that maybe he didn't want that. Maybe this is why it's not as gory. I doubt it. Kevin Williamson is probably the reason, just because of his track record. But I do wish they kind of would have pushed for it. It's 2023. I mean, slasher movies. I want them violent. I just do. And
I do too.
If they don't like. If you are a person who's into slashers, but you want them to not be violent, then that's fine. And you can find those movies and they can work for you and you can be like, I love it. And that's great. But when I see a movie like this, personally, I'm going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Right? We all have our preferences. Right? Because people love to attack each other and they're just like, oh, well, you just want this and that. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's what I want. That's fine. It's okay to want things, and if you don't get them, you're not going to enjoy it as much. It's pretty simplistic, right? So, that's all I wanted to say on that matter, is because I just think that some people come at you and they want to talk about like, well, you just want such insane levels of violence and this and that. It's like,
yes,
correct.
That's
correct.
Right.
That's so. So?
Yeah.
I can still enjoy the movies I don't get it.
Sure.
That's not the same on your end. The
Right.
people who hate gore, when they get it, they most of the time are like, I didn't like it because it didn't have it. Or because it had it.
Because it did have
right?
it, yeah.
And there's plenty of horror movies, and I'm the gore hound,
Yeah.
that don't have any, and I love.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
I don't need it. I want it.
Right.
Right? And I'm totally fine with the opposite. Like a completely bloodless film.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
There's tons of them that I adore.
Yeah.
So
They're terrifying, of course.
Anyway, that's that. Sick. It's good.
It's good.
It's good. It's worth a watch.
I like the the masks, right? The face covering is that's what hides the disguise. I think that's obviously, as you're saying,
Smart.
coronavirus is central to the plot. So.
And there's definitely a lot of things in here, like cute little nods to references only people who lived through this pandemic would get, right? Like, if you took this back in time 5-10 years ago and played it for someone, they wouldn't get the in-jokes of, like, going to a grocery store and not being able to get toilet paper or, like, being limited to like one roll per person, or like
Yeah.
people fighting over certain things in the store and stuff like that, where
So
you like
crazy.
actually were involved in that
So crazy.
when you went out and you were just like, people are crazy.
Yeah.
And this film does have a lot of like funny callbacks that remind you of how similar we all are and how similar our experiences are, because you're like, oh,
like,
people went through that too, right? Like people also thought that and did that and had that experience. So I thought that was cool and immersive.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to more films, that kind of come out and address the pandemic. I know that we've watched a couple this last year that were maybe filmed during the pandemic, and so they had, there was just a couple that it was prominent in, and I just think that's fascinating to see, like a real life event now being translated into film, and kind of like it's sort of how we collectively can process, what happened. So.
Yeah, and this will be a good little time capsule of a film to revisit one day and be like, oh yeah, remember?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, but no time soon. I have no interest in viewing this again. But yeah, that's that.
That's that.
It's good.
It's good.
That's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have Peacock, watch it. If you don't have Peacock, you can get it for $4.99 for the month. It says it has ads, but it only played ads before the movie started.
Yeah.
And never again during the film.
No.
Right?
Yep.
And if it's $4.99 to get Peacock for the month, get it and then immediately cancel it. You'll have it for a month.
Yeah.
And it's like you rented it for $5, right?
Exactly.
And people rent films for $5 all the time. So $4.99, you get one commercial before it starts. It never breaks it up again. Don't pay for the $10 one. It doesn't matter. It's just one ad. You can deal with it.
Yeah.
And, there's other cool things on there as well. So you can, like, browse it and see if there's anything else you want to watch before the month's up. But that's up to you. Let us know. Bye.